Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Hey, coming here with another live podcast, if you will. Podcast, not those are the same thing. Anyway, coming to you with a live show. We are TriCasting this on Periscope. Be sure to follow us over there on YouTube at youtube.com/Chris Voss. Be sure on YouTube to hit that like button. Subscribe, please, if you would, to the channel. Hit that bell notification so you get notifications for all the great podcasts we're doing. We've expanded the podcast series, and it's amazing all the wonderful guests we're bringing to you, like the one we have today. Go to patreon.com/Chris Voss. You can see all the latest and greatest videos and get access to our private Facebook group that we have there. And thanks to our good friends at AT&T, who is sharing with us the new Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus and S8. And be sure to look for the new Note 8 coming out. We'll be reviewing that courtesy of our good friends at AT&T when it comes to there. So I want to welcome to the show a wonderful gentleman. He is Mitch Jackson, who enjoys combining law, social media, and technology to disrupt, hack, and improve his clients' companies, causes, and professional relationships. And he looks good in a thong, from what I hear. He's an award-winning 2009.
You've been talking to my wife, Chris.
I could tell a joke, but I won't. He's an award-winning 2009 Orange County Trial Lawyer of the Year and a 2013 California Litigation Lawyer of the Year who enjoys speaking around the world about business, law, and digital. Wow, that's some hype you sent me.
I'll tell you what, especially the digital part, I'm loving this. What a great time to be alive. I mean, with technology, social media, digital platforms, AR, VR, AI, MR. I'm loving it, Chris. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm a big fan of your podcast, and I'm looking forward to checking this out on Periscope after the show, too, and sharing it. So appreciate being on the show.
Thanks, man. I have a lot of respect for you. I've seen you all over the internet. You really have carved out a nice little niche because there haven't been a lot of attorneys doing social media outreach or building their sort of profiles online. I know some attorneys probably feel a little held back because they kind of have those ambulance chaser sort of things, or maybe they just don't understand social media.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's the state bar rules. The state bar in each state controls how we can brand, market, and share information offline and online. And the traditional offline rules and regulations, they apply online too. And a lot of lawyers are a little bit hesitant about jumping on. But let me tell you why I like social so much. From day one, starting my practice out of the back of my car, Chris, playing basketball down in Laguna Beach, California at Main Beach. That's how I was marketing. The more three-pointers I hit, the more jump shots I hit, the more friends I made, the more referrals I got. And this is before the internet, it's before social media. And I always took that attitude onto the digital platforms. And I realized instead of just you and I meeting each other right now over breakfast and talking business and talking about helping each other, now when we do this, we have an audience of thousands, tens of thousands, and in some cases, hundreds of thousands. So it's a great time to build your business, to build your brand, to improve your top of mind awareness, regardless of who you are or what you do. So that's why I'm doing this. I'm loving it. And it's a lot of fun too. David Merriman Scott, who's a friend of mine, we talked about social media and how much fun it's brought back into doing business. I mean, if you're a people person, social's fun, and it's a great way to build your business. So that's why I'm all in.
You know, you bring up a good point. A lot of people look at social now as just oh God, I got to do this for marketing. Oh God, I got to do this for the thing. But if you're a social creature or a person who is a narcissist like myself,
no, you're not.
Or other leaders of our country.
You're opinionated, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
Well, I don't have children, so I can't pollute the world with my views. So this is the only way that I can do that.
Well, now you've got legal protection in case you go sideways. So don't sweat it. Just keep on being you, Chris.
That's mainly the reason I had you on the show, Mitch, is because I'm anticipating something I'm doing, being this podcast, having some sort of legal jeopardy. So this is kind of like a payment towards my what's that fee that you guys take?
This is called a retainer, a digital retainer. So
like a partial payment towards my future retainer for the first.
That's too funny. Hey, you know what? Just getting ready for today's show, we had someone post something that's actually defamatory in nature. It's actionable. Now, I don't give a shit. It doesn't bother me. I don't care. It's just a matter of deleting and unfollowing. But it's amazing how quickly somebody can expose themselves to liability and not even realize it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we were going to talk about your book that you guys have contributed to about bullying and online, shaming, stuff of that nature. Shame
Nation. And it's a new book out by my friend Sue Sheff. I'm a consulting expert along with some friends of mine, Officer Mike Byers, and some other good people that most of you know on social. The best book on shaming and bullying and online harassment and online wrongful conduct I've ever read. This is good stuff, Chris. I recommend everybody get it. It just came out last week, and I'm recommending that every high school classroom, every CEO, every executive, every employee across America needs to get this book, because this is a growing problem that's ruining lives. And it's a growing problem that needs to be attacked and taken care of. I mean, starting from the top. It comes from leadership, right? And I'm not going to mention any names, but this is an issue that is uprooting and tearing families apart. It's resulting in teen suicides. And it's so prevalent, Chris, that I tell people, so get the book, everybody. It's awesome.
And what website can they go to get this book?
They can go to samenationbook.com, or it's on amzn.to. So I'm a big fan of Sue Sheff and Melissa Shore and their new book. And by the way, the foreword to this book was written by Monica Lewinsky. So this is big time, everybody. So check it out. But what I was going to say is, what a lot of people aren't aware of is the number one greatest frequency of phone calls we get at our law firm each and every day and each and every week are phone calls from people who are being bullied online, who are the victims of sextortion, who are the victims of online defamation, more so than any other type of case. Yeah, it's a huge problem. And what we've noticed is it's just getting worse each and every day. This type of conduct's being normalized, and people are starting to get used to this type of conduct. And so what people need to realize is that, this type of conduct, there are ramifications, whether it's in the civil courts, the criminal courts, or somebody who contemplates suicide because they're bombarded with hateful, shameful, bullying type of online social media posts. So I encourage everybody to get up to speed, read the stories, read the solutions, read the examples, and let's fix this. Let's make online social media and the digital platforms a better place for all of us. I mean, that's what it's all about. We're all in this rat race together, so we might as well make it as enjoyable as possible, right?
There certainly is something to say about what we've become, this troll nation, and some of it's bled into our politics, which I don't want to get into. But there does seem to be a thing where, instead of having sort of progressive sort of attitudes towards making our country great and making it better, there just seems to be this trolling of hate. And you speak to something that's close to my mind. In fact, most people probably calling you YouTube stars. I know since going back 2011, the hate, the rage, the anger, the shaming, fat shaming has been huge. Me being at one time up to 350, 370 pounds. I actually have a video that I did mostly for entertainment, where I went down to one of these burger joints where if you weigh 350 pounds, they give you free burgers. But I did it mostly for the entertainment. I knew they spanked you if you didn't eat your meal, and there was these giant burgers. And I'm like, what, my YouTube audience will love this. Not for once did it ever clear my brain that this would become one of my biggest fat shaming trolled videos of all time. So I've experienced a lot of that on YouTube, and I think a lot of YouTubers get it. I mean, we've all just kind of had to come together as a private community and go, hey, it's okay, man. We all go through this. But I have been told on multiple occasions that my videos are so bad, like I'll review a product, and so mostly it's like the really old ones that I wasn't very good at what I was doing back then, like 2012. But I've been told that my video was so bad that I should commit suicide and my life was not worth living. And fortunately by that time I had a pretty good thick skin. But being told that, especially when you deal with a lot of the depression that I dealt with and being overweight, I still deal with depression. I probably have all my life. It's not a really good thing. I dealt with a lot of suicidal sort of thoughts when I was overweight and I felt trapped by my eating. And so it wasn't good. But for me, you know, I'm old enough, I can build a thick skin. I'm an online person. But sometimes I wonder how much, you know, as a parent, you almost have to sit down with your child nowadays. I mean, I would, if I had children, I'd sit down with them as they went online and say, okay, look, there's this thing, you know, called trolling and shaming. And there's people that are really sick, perversive, and evil. And they're going to say things to you that are just going to destroy you. And I don't know many parents that are socially aware of that or prepare their kids for it.
And it's a huge problem, Chris. And I'm sorry to hear about, you know, some of those challenges. But, you know, from what I've seen and watched you do online, I'm loving your material. I'm loving your content. So it's good to see you rise above, you know, that type of wrongful conduct. But it's such a big problem that about 2 or 3 years ago, we actually put up a blog post. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share the post because it gives resources for parents and teenagers and everyone else being affected by this stuff. But we put up a blog post because we just didn't have time to handle all the incoming calls. And if you go to my law firm website, it's the boring traditional law firm website, my kick-ass social media site, streaming.lawyer, that's my post and my videos and stuff like that. But if you go to jacksonandwilson.com, and in the search bar, type in bullying or how this law firm deals with bullying. It will take you to a detailed, updated blog post that explains the problem. It shares real-world examples of, you know, tragic stories of teenagers who are the victims of high school bullying, who have taken their lives. But it also provides resources. It provides solutions and ideas. What I suggest families, parents, teenagers, anybody who is a victim of shaming and bullying, what they need to do legally. For example, you need to place your teacher, your principal, your local police department or sheriff department, your local board of trustees of your school district. You need to place them on written notice, not an email, not a text. You need to put together a written notice as to exactly what's going on. You need to send it via FedEx or UPS or certified mail so that you can document they received your notice. And then what happens is they have to take your complaints seriously. That kicks in certain legal notice issues that has the principal looking over the teacher's shoulder. It has the board of trustees of your school district looking over the principal's shoulders. It has the sheriff department looking over to the board of trustees. And guess what? It has your local district attorney's office looking over all the above. That's the way you get things done and you take care of this problem. So I lay all of that out. And then later on today, Chris, this book's so good. I mean, and I really mean this. This is like it right here, guys and gals. I'll be adding this book to the resources because oftentimes it's not that it's a situation that can be dealt with if you have the tools to deal with it. And so we try to give the tools so that people can try to handle these things on their own and and put a stop to all of this. It's not a touchy-feely blog post. It's not about trying to figure out why we have trolls, why we have assholes out there that are bullying and shaming other people. It's a blog post that shows you how to take these idiots down. Okay, yeah. I have zero tolerance for this stuff. And so, people, if you're having these issues, check it out, share it with your family and friends, because I think it will help, improve the situation dramatically. Yeah. So I appreciate you bringing this up, Chris.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge issue. And you talk a lot about social media and different aspects people should be aware of on social media. And this is a great topic, bullying. The other thing is, what would you recommend as to, say I'm a parent and I know my child is getting some stuff. At what point because I look at stuff, and you probably do too, when someone makes a comment that's trolling, that's ugly, that's maybe shaming in some way or another, at what point does it reach a level of needing the sort of action that you talked about? Or is there a frequency of it that needs to happen where obviously someone is targeting your child or you on a regular basis? Or, because there's one-offs, and sometimes I just kind of have to judge, okay, that's not really as powerful as some of the other stuff, which is kind of sad that I had that sort of.
It's a tough call, Chris, right? It's a tough call because, you want to, on one hand, I think it's good to teach your child how to have thick skin and like a duck, let water roll off its back. On the other side of the coin, bullying and shaming isn't okay. So I always reference, let's just call it trolling. Whatever that trolling end result is, whether it's shaming or bullying, I always reference trolling as recreational trolling and criminal trolling. Recreational trolling is somebody that occasionally will post a derogatory comment, a statement, just to try to piss you off, just to try to ruin your blog post, whatever. You can block them, you can unfollow them, and that usually puts a stop to it. Criminal trolling is somebody that intentionally is conducting themselves in a way to harm you, your family, either physically or emotionally, or you or your business. Okay, we see a lot of businesses out there, and that's really where I get involved, is on the business side of things, where you've got trolls, sophisticated trolls. We've heard all about the Russian bots and things like this. This is really happening, people. If you're doing business in the United States, for example, or anywhere around the world, and you've got a competitor that has the knowledge, the expertise, and the financial wherewithal to bring this type of trolling campaign to your product or service, you're in for a battle. I mean, you're in for a real struggle. And so falling back to the high school kids, which is what your original question was about. Sorry about that. I think it's a balance. You kind of have to wrap your head around what's really going on. Is somebody really going after you because of your height, your weight, your color, your sexual orientation, your political affiliations? Or are they simply just, poking you in the side just to try to get a rise out of you? I mean, there's a balance there, and each case is different, and that's why it's so difficult to deal with sometimes.
It really is, and hopefully maybe they cover some of this in the book. The one thing I do is I've got a Twitch channel, and we use YouTube for gaming as well, and we broadcast gaming. So I do a lot in the gaming community, and I got to tell you, normally with gaming, you have to build these raids and these teams of 6 people. And the best gamers are usually these 12, 15-year-old kids. And so they'll be on our team, and they're notorious at that age. I mean, us older people, we don't really deal with that. We just kind of game and have fun. But they are notorious for just sniping, backbiting each other. I mean, I remember going through this when I was a kid. But they say things about each other's mother, and it's
crazy. It's crazy.
Like
my son's a gamer.
I'll hear them introduce me, and they'll be like, "Hey, this is Chris, our good friend. He's a really good raider, and he's really nice." And I'm like, "What am I like? I feel kind of creepy now." But I'm like the nice guy to them because they're so used to. And sometimes I have to go, "Hey, look, you know what? You guys need to just enjoy the game. Quit saying ugly, sniping things to each. But they're just mean." And they're boys. They're all boys. They're not. These aren't like teenage girls going at each other.
It's a different world out. It's a different world out there.
Yeah,
it's a different world, and the expectations and standards are different. And what you described, my son is a great high school student. He's a senior, good student, good grades, good athlete, but he also enjoys gaming. And I've watched him, engage with his buddies. Now he checks himself because he knows that mom and dad this is serious stuff to us. But I'm hearing the other end of the conversation. And so, it's a balance. I think it's about parents. As parents, you got to be involved. You got to be.
Do you hear their conversation, or do you just hear his part of it on the head? If he's got headphones on, you probably.
Yeah. So I'll make him, when I walk in, I'll make him pull the headset so that I can hear it on the speakers. So I want to know what's going on. And he knows I'm busting his chops over it. Okay. But that's just the way it is. It's my house. I'm paying for everything, and it's my rules. And if you don't like it, and we've never had that conversation, but he understands the dynamics of what's really going on. I think, steps.
His bread and butter and
he understands the drill, and his friends are good kids, so it's all good. But taking a couple of steps back from your experiences or in my family, I think what really scares me is that right now, especially for teens and young millennials, this is something where I just shared, Chris, I'm going to read something to you real quick. Hopefully it won't pop up. You can't see my screen, can you?
No.
Any chance? Well, I just read this morning, and this blows me away. According to a 2014 Pew Research Center survey, 73% of adult internet users have witnessed online harassment. 65% of those under the age of 30 have experienced online harassment, and 28% of Americans have admitted to participating in online social media harassment. I mean, those numbers are scary, and that's 2014 numbers. I would suggest to you those numbers are increasing today, 2 to 3 years later. And so conversation's good, information's good, and I think I'm tired of people looking the other way on social media. I wrote a blog post about why it's not okay to look the other way on social media. If you want to protect your community, if you want to have a community that you can be proud of, a community that's out there to help each other, then when you see somebody in your community being slammed, being harassed, being shamed, I think you need to step up, you need to stand tall, and you need to speak loudly as to what's going on. We need to look out for each other and have each other's backs. And I'd like to see that change quite a bit on the social media communities.
Yeah, I mean, I remember years ago studying road rage, and people feel enabled to have road rage and be the way they are because they feel that they're in that private space of their car, and so they feel it's easier to act out at people. The same is true online. What's interesting to me is, and this is one of the things that disturbs me every time I hear it in gaming. Two of the favorite gaming sayings that they love to say, especially when they're killing somebody, in a game online or whatever, but they'll say "rest in peace," or they'll say "go kill yourself." They'll literally say that to each other in chat. They're like, "Go kill yourself, kid," and they do it at such a frequency that it's kind of alarming. In fact, I heard a kid the other day. I think it was Sunday. He said to his sister, who I know he's like 16, and I know his sister is about his age. He said, "Go kill yourself." And they love saying that online. It's like one of those championing things. You kill somebody, you're like, "Go kill yourself. You suck at this game," and the shaming is unreal. But the fact that "go kill yourself" has become like this thing that you say, and the implications of that. I mean, I'm so glad I don't have children, Mitch. I mean, I saw a lot of this coming. My brother has dealt with, trying to get his kids online and how to ramp them up, and, and how to keep away, the craziness and the insanity, and not to mention the crazy, sites that you can get into. But yeah, it's a wide open world now, and what your kids can be exposed to is pretty crazy.
But it is the world we're living in. And so the reality is you have to embrace this. I talk to other professionals about social media and digital, Chris, and they're, well, I don't want to be on Facebook. I don't want to be on Twitter, Snapchat, or Instagram, whatever. I'm like, dude, if you're not on these platforms, if you're not building a digital footprint, a digital billboard, the right type of reputation or brand right now, you're not going to be relevant in 3 to 5 years. This isn't an option. This is, Robert Scoble and Shel Israel, who have The Fourth Transformation, which is a book about virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, and artificial intelligence, talk about we're going to see more change in the next 5 years online on digital than we did the last 50. And I think that's conservative. 50 times more. I think that's conservative. I think it's going to be much more than that because of the power of exponential advancements. And the reality is you need to embrace it. You need to monitor it. I'm a firm believer, Chris, in consequences and accountability. All right. When things are happening, especially in business online and social media, make sure you hold your employees accountable. Make sure there are consequences to what does or doesn't happen. And that includes, your competition. That includes how you engage with your clients and customers online. There's never been a better time to start a business, to do business online. And despite all of the problems with social and digital, I think the opportunities substantially outweigh those problems.
Plus, if you have kids, you need to understand what's going on. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Be aware of what's going online and be the thing. I call it, you call it a few different things. I call it your social real estate, your online real estate. And really, you're building a house or a business in a virtual real estate sort of thing. And from that aspect, you constantly need to be doing improvements. You constantly need to be doing additions. You need to be doing revisions. You need to be building and expanding that real estate so it takes on a wider and broader audience space. And so that's usually when I talk to my clients for our consulting firm is you need to be building your online real estate because it kind of helps them convey all the different things you would do, let's say with commercial real estate or your own real estate, and that it's a property that you're building. And even when I'll tell clients, look, we're going to build your property, we're going to build your followers, we're going to build your audience. And even after you stop using us after a couple of years, you can still, access that audience, and that audience is yours. That is your online real estate if you don't get hacked, actually. And you can keep using that for as long as you want to. So it's technically money in the bank if you use it right.
It's like perpetual branding. And I was interviewed in USA Today about a month ago about the Rob Kardashian China Instagram post, if you remember that, when they were posting the pictures. And I had done a post a year and a half ago on sextortion, and the USA Reporter found that post of a year and a half ago, and that's why she reached out to me, because she looked at me as a perceived expert in the state of California on that particular case. You're right. This content has legs that continue to run for a long, long period of time if you share it correctly. I'll tell you what, though, one of the biggest challenges I've seen with startups and new business owners with, building their online businesses, like you said, their online real estate, is that I think it's super important that you make sure you're doing business online as a corporation or a limited liability company. Now, this depends on what state you're living in. It depends on what your products or services are. Consult with a lawyer in your state. But doing business as a properly formed, managed, and run business entity will protect your personal assets from your business liabilities. And there are business liabilities like Chris, like you and I have been discussing online. We just wrapped up a big defamation defense case where an online influencer went online and shared his thoughts about somebody else, which he believed, and I believe they were based upon fact. And it resulted in him being sued for $5 million. It resulted in us being involved in a California Superior Court case for close to a year, depositions, litigation. The case ended up settling just before trial. I was able to get him out of the lawsuit without having to pay a dime. So that $5 million lawsuit was settled for zero, okay? Had he been doing business as an entity, as a corporation, he actually could have just let that lawsuit move all the way to judgment and then bankrupt his corporation and gone on with his life. But because he was an individual, his personal assets were exposed. So this stuff is serious stuff, and people need to realize when you're doing business online, do it as a LLC or a corporation. It creates tax advantages, retirement fund advantages, liability protection. But that's like the biggest mistake I see people make.
The saddest part for me when it comes to education, not the saddest part, but one of the saddest parts, is they really need to teach a bit of law, at least, some basic 101 stuff. Because the Constitution and the founders of our country gave us these laws as protection. And I remember one time I was fighting a speeding ticket. I amassed a lot of speeding tickets at my BMW 540 guy.
Allegedly.
Only BMWs. It's just for a year. I finally had to just quit owning BMWs because I was tired of living in court. But I learned from some really great attorneys years ago how to be really good in court. Really bury people with. I can bury people with. It's been so long since I've been in court now because I've been online and not running businesses. But what is it called when you discovery? I can bury people in discovery. Like I kill you in discovery. So if you're fighting me even on like a speeding ticket, I want to know the cop's contact lens. I want to know the last time the gun was checked. I mean, all that kind of crap. And so I had a judge say to me one time, she goes, I really like what Chris is doing, even though he's just fighting a speeding ticket and being a dick. He's being a U.S. citizen who is using the tools that the Constitution gave him. And I really appreciate that he is doing that and recognizes the value of it. And I think what the judge was saying to me is that a lot of people that they come across don't. And there's pretty much an attorney saying, no one likes attorneys until you get sued, or never ever needs an attorney until they get sued, right?
That's when we become your best friend.
That's when we become your best friend. And all the jokes go out the window for attorneys. Yeah. But when you learn law and when you learn the importance of being innocent until proven guilty, and some of the tenets of the legalness of the rights that were given that many citizens around the world in their applicable countries don't have, it's incredibly powerful.
It is, and it's the best legal system in the world. I'm first generation lawyer. I'm the first one from my family, Chris, immediate family, to go to college. Kind of a blue collar guy, and I had no idea really what I was getting into, other than I wanted to help people and try to help them fix their problems. And 30 years later, I met my wife in law school. My daughter's in her second year of law school at USC.
Wow.
It's the best decision I've ever made. I really enjoy what I'm doing because I like people and I like helping people. Having said all that, what I'm seeing today is a lot of people online doing business, but they're not doing it the right way. Yeah. And it really, really bothers me because, social media has been around, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or some of the newer platforms. This is a new frontier. We don't have a lot of experienced business people on social media, yet they're out there giving advice. They're out there telling other people how to be successful, and they haven't yet achieved that themselves. And I get all that, all right? I get all that. But what I'm excited about bringing to the platforms is, 30 years of business and legal tips that really almost anyone doing business on social media can easily incorporate into their business. There were some questions about intellectual property law and patents and things like this in one of your Facebook posts before today's show. And yes, intellectual property rights have never been more important. Like we just talked about, because digital is exploding, we're going to see so much more change over the next 5 years than the last 50. All of that relates to intellectual property, trademarks, trade names, service marks, patents. Yes, it's critically important, and you have to go about protecting your ideas, and you have to go about and do business respecting other people's copyrights, other people's intellectual property. If you do that one thing and do business as a corporation or an LLC, you're going to be ahead of 99% of your competition.
Yeah.
And it's not that complicated, okay? And then you can use all the bells and whistles, Chris, that you teach to brand yourself and market your companies, because you've got a foundation that's solid, that's going to separate your business liabilities. By the way, before the internet, the average business in the United States was sued 3 times during the business career, okay? The business life. I have a feeling online that number is probably going to double when we look 20 years from now as to what's going on. So that's why you want to take these initial precautionary steps as your foundation and then build upon that. And
I'll give you a great story that deals with that. A long time ago, we had 3 core businesses that we owned. And then we had a lot of different, I was always playing with different toys and business. I think there's over 26 corporations to my name over the years. And so we started a 3rd business, which was a modeling agency and acting modeling agency. We'd put people into movies and gigs and stuff. At the time in Utah, we had 2 big TV shows. We had the Angels thing in Utah being filmed, and then there was some other stuff. A lot of films came to Utah. So we started this company, and we had 2 ex-employees from a competitor, and they came over to us. There'd been some violations of their employment contracts. It was kind of weird how it worked out. I had been set up on a date with their owner several months prior. I had been set up with a date after we'd hired her employees, and I didn't know it was a date. It was a business meeting for me. I thought she wanted to talk to me about me buying her out, because we'd taken on 2 of her ex-employees. And so later on, my friend called me and goes, "Hey, you had that date workout?" And I'm like, "That was a date? I thought that was a business meeting." So turns out she felt rejected. And there's the old line, "Hell hath no fury, like a woman scorned." So she knew who I was, and we had money. We had big houses, both me and my partner. We lived well. And so we got sued for $300,000 for interfering with their non-compete or non-employment clause, the non-compete employment.
Non-compete?
Yeah. And I mean, she would have called us. We would have just worked it out. So we got sued for that, for $300,000. Mm-hmm. Now, we just barely started the corporation. And back then, every corporation, still to this day, every corporation I start is a C Corp. And the reason it's always a C Corp, even though it's double taxation, all that kind of crap, is it gives me 100% protection of my personal assets. So within the service of the lawsuit, we shut down that corporation, sealed it, put it away, and then we just went on with another one. And of course, we didn't involve the 2 employees, and I own multiple companies, so we just employed them with the other companies, which really pissed them off. So they sued us for all this money. And in the end, after, I don't know, 6 months, they spent $50,000 getting just to the court thing. And I think we spent just 10 with our attorneys. Then eventually I fired them. In the end, we settled for basically what we spent for attorney fees. They settled because we went to them and said, you know what? You sued a C Corp, so we don't give a crap about our personal assets, and we're smart enough to protect them. And number 2, the company has no assets. Attorneys hate hearing words, no assets, right? Those are the 2 words they don't want. There's no assets? What are we doing here?
Or insurance. We always check for insurance.
Yeah. We're like, you sued a month-old company that has no assets, that has no revenue, that has nothing.
They should have done their due diligence.
Yeah, they should have done their due diligence. But she was so, it was all about me, getting back at me for blowing her off on a date.
So Chris, this is an offline experience that resulted in what you just shared with your audience. How often do we see that happening online on a daily basis?
I'm not sure.
I mean, it's exponentially more so where you're engaging with somebody, you're exchanging information, sharing their content, commenting on their post. It's so easy for people to misunderstand the extent of that relationship. It's a lot easier for people to become upset with you online now because of the lack of context in what we're doing, right? And so it's just smart to do business the right way and then build your empire. I mean, that's the key, right? Model what other successful businesses are doing, whether it's Microsoft, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you think, Uber, whatever you think's a successful business, I guarantee you they're doing business as an entity. And not just one entity, multiple entities. Real quick, little fine tuning here. If you're in a company or a business that has assets, a good example is a dentist. A dental office oftentimes will set themselves up as a corporation. They'll put their expensive dental equipment into a limited liability company. They'll put their accounts receivable in another limited liability company. They contract these relationships to the main corporation, and it protects that dentist from malpractice lawsuits. It protects his assets and his accounts receivable from incoming lawsuits. There's all types of ways to protect yourself, and all of those ways apply to online businesses. And one of the reasons, Chris, I love social is 20 years ago, I wouldn't be able to share this information with the world. I mean, you'd have to come into the office or maybe at a lawyer convention. Now we can go online on Periscope, Facebook Live, or your show, and we can share this valuable information around the world. It's free, it's fun, it'll help people run their businesses online. And that, I'm at the point in my career, Chris, where I enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. Is not all lawyers are assholes. We actually like helping people. I'm the guy next door. And so if I can help people by taking advantage of social and digital, that's what I'm going to do. And you and I both know, over time, yes, it helps with referrals. Over time, it helps with business opportunities. I get that. And everybody gets that. But this is a great time for everyone listening, whatever your area of expertise, whatever you like to do, start using social and digital to share your secret sauce, to help others. Spend 70% of your time listening and engaging and helping, and the other 10, 20, or 30% of the time maybe talking about your products or services, or even better, empowering other people, satisfied customers to do that, on your behalf. And it's just cool. I'm loving it.
It's super important, and I'm glad you're out doing it. You're the only person I really see doing it. And you do such a great job of it, and people really need to be educated. They never realize how important the law is, knowing the law, having a good attorney, until you get sued. And by then it's too late, because whatever advice you've been acting upon has gotten you sued, and you probably should have consulted with that.
Well, how about this? I can honestly tell you, and I've litigated more cases than most California lawyers. A lot of people think lawyers go to trial and try cases all the time. That's not the case. I think in the state of California, the average lawyer tries 3 cases in his or her career. And I'm talking about like real jury trial cases.
Yeah.
I'm up to around 70 or so. I quit counting after 60. And I will tell you that almost without exception, had the parties during the original incident or issue or concern or problem, business partners, whatever it might be, had they immediately sat down and talked with an attorney or a mediator or an arbitrator or somebody to try to work out this difference of opinion, they could have avoided 2 years of time wasted, expensive, unnecessary litigation. But you get the personalities involved, you get the human nature involved, people get pissed off, and before you know it, everyone drops gloves and it's game on.
Oh yeah.
You know,
it's crazy. They don't realize the attorney fees are gonna be the winners.
You know, it's, yeah, I mean, what you want to do, and you mentioned a situation, you know, look, if anybody has been wronged and you need legal counsel for something that's happened to you online, the first thing your lawyer should be doing is using an experienced investigator to do a due diligence background check on the person who you're thinking about bringing a claim against. Make sure that individual either has insurance, assets, make sure that there's actually a liability there. There's two parts to a case. There's liability and damages. Did that person really do something wrong?
Yeah.
Okay, that provides a remedy to you, or are you just emotionally caught up in what you think did or didn't happen, right?
I think intent's a big issue of that also. I mean, certainly you've got to decide, did this person really intend to do this? Was this an accident? Was it malicious, or was it, you know, something that
depends on what's going on. Sometimes negligence, sometimes just carelessness. Intent doesn't even play a role in that. It's you might post something online because you're rushed for time. You really haven't done the research. I don't really want to harm you, Chris, but I post something about you that maybe if I'd given it a little bit more thought, wasn't the smartest thing to do. But if the general public perceives what I posted about you as painting a certain picture about you, your company or whatever it might be, that might be actionable. It might just be gross negligence on my part. It may not be a defamation lawsuit, but it could be interference with prospective business advantage. There are all types of claims out there that people aren't aware of that they need to be. And I always tell people, Chris, and this isn't legal, it's just an approach that works really well for me. Before posting anything online, before saying something in the offline world, before I get into it with an attorney down at the courthouse, if somebody says something to me, I always deflect, reflect, and select. I deflect what's just been said to me as though I'm a piece of Teflon. I deflect it. I let it fall off of me. I then reflect upon what just happened. What was just said? Why did that person say it? Are they having a bad day? Are they generally upset with something that I did? What are the dynamics? And then I select a response. What's the best response that I can share, if any at all, that's going to carry my client and I down the road long term? So deflect, reflect, and then select. That's kept me out of so much trouble over the years. I can't tell you, and I'll share with you, I think that probably applies to social and digital. If more people would deflect, reflect, and select their response, they'd probably keep themselves out of trouble.
That coffee mugs or shirts and sell that. That
should be the hashtag over my shoulder, right?
It should. Reflect, deflect, all that good stuff.
Deflect, reflect, and select, yes.
And like I say, I'm so glad, and if anybody is not following Mitch Jackson, I highly recommend you should. I've been following him for several years now. I think I first was introduced to you on blab.com.
Oh, good old Blab.
Good old Blab.
So what a great example for everyone to really do their due diligence. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but we had so many friends of ours, Chris, that built their whole business platform on Blab. And then when Blab went out and decided to shut down, they're wondering, what do I do next? And I saw the same thing happen with Spreecast, which was a similar platform before Blab. Jeff Floor, who's the co-founder of Spreecast, is a friend of mine. And I watched what happened with Spreecast. And as soon as they monetized the platform, people left. And I saw that as what was going to happen with Blab. And it's an interesting dynamic where you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right? Yeah. You know, and I hope people learn from that.
I mean, I think a year before Blab went out of business, year and a half, I believe, I was calling that it would go out of business. Because I could see the writing on the wall. In fact, I have one friend that anytime he goes to a video service, I can pretty much guarantee it's going to go out of business. He's kind of become the canary in the coal mine. But, you know, I've invested heavily in YouTube. It's, of course, backed by Google. I think I was in YouTube before it was Google. or before it was owned by Google. I can't remember. It's been a long time. I think my account was set up in 2006, so I'm not sure if they bought it.
What got you interested in social and digital, if you don't mind me asking? Because I know you've been on this forever.
You know, for years I was a brick and mortar business CEO. We owned a lot of different corporations, about 20 different corporations. We had 3 core businesses over about 13 years. I had my mortgage company for almost 20. I moved out of Utah and moved to Las Vegas. So we ran a few corporations for a couple of years and then finally got tired of doing the whole interstate thing of running corporations in a state I didn't want to live in. So we left behind a couple of corporations, but it was pretty much the recession and the recession wiping out the mortgage business. That was something that hit me really hard. It pretty much wiped out 20 years of multi-million-dollar mortgage business that I built and all of our other companies. The recession just slaughtered everything. And if you remember how bad it was, I mean, that was.
Oh, I remember. No, it was hard for all of us. But what was it that about social and digital that attracted your attention?
So I've always kind of had this ear, being a CEO and being innovative and building companies. I've always kind of had this ear for kind of what's going on. You know, I kind of collectively count stuff in an insane way. And I started just hearing more and more about this Twitter thing. And I was like, you know, what is this Twitter thing? And so finally I got on it. And at first I did what everybody does. They go, this is stupid. No one's talking to me. I leave. And then I came back and said, you know, I really want to find this. And what I found with Twitter, and this was in the early days of late 2008, early 2009, was that if I advertised my companies that I was trying to save, I could get clicks to the website and I could get traffic and potential business. And I'm like, okay, so the more I play with this little Twitter thing, the more business comes to my website, the more I push this button, the more eyeballs that go to that. And I'm like, hey, this is freaking great. This is the new future and the frontier. And so that's how I got into it. It was kind of a necessity of you know, trying to keep businesses alive. And of course I found, and then somebody called me up one day and said, hey, you know, you're like the top 1,000 person on Twitter. This is before a lot of the stars even got into it. And we've been seeing what you're doing. We'll pay you to teach us what you're doing. And I'm like, people pay for this crap? Are you kidding me? I mean, to me, I've just always been a marketer and a salesperson. And I mean, social media, I get it. I didn't need to read a book about it. It's just, got it. It's media that's social, duh. And so I just got hooked on it. What brought you into social media?
So you and I both had business histories well before social and towards the beginning of the internet, right? And so I remember spending a lot of money each month here at my law firm marketing our practice. That's just what everybody did, right? Whether it was a yellow page ad, local magazines, radio, television. Remember those days? And so in 1996, I've always been kind of a tech geek, and in 1996, 1995 or 1996, you can use the Wayback Machine to see our early websites. We put up a website, 4 or 5 page Microsoft front page website. And about probably like the first firm in Orange County, California to do that, maybe one of the first firms, you know, in California. But about 6 or 8 months later, $1 million case came into our office through that website. Now, here's the thing. She didn't even own a computer. What happened is that she saw the URL in our yellow page ad, and she's friends with us now. And she said, you know, I thought to myself, here's a lawyer with one of these www websites. This law firm must be well ahead of everybody else. I'm going to call them first. And so once I got her on the phone and we developed rapport and we were able to step in and help her with the case. But the only reason that case came to us was because of the existence of our website. Now, I've never been accused of being the sharpest knife in the drawer, Chris. But when that happened, I'm like, geez, if this works and the other person doesn't even have a website, right? And so we've just always been all in, and we've made lots of mistakes, and you know, but I've always enjoyed the relationships that I've formed and built online, and I love taking them offline. That's why some of the conventions that we go to, it's so much fun to meet people for the first time in real life. You know, it's like you don't just shake hands, you give each other a big hug because you feel like you know each other, right? And you know, I always tell people and clients, they're always worried about platforms disappearing. Well, I heard this, Mitch, you were on stage talking about Meerkat, and it's not around anymore. Why should I listen to you anymore? Well, because the Meerkat platform brought in a lot of business to my law firm, a lot of referrals, okay, which we've then taken those relationships over to the other platforms. That's one reason. So I tell people, platforms come and go, but good relationships can last a lifetime.
Well, you couldn't see Twitter buying Periscope and,
I mean, it's all good. And look at the platforms as welcome mats. The more welcome mats you have out there and that you're playing around with and you're engaging and you're helping people as opposed to standing up on a soapbox and being that late night, whether it's a lawyer ad that I can't stand or whatever type of advertising's in your industry, I think that's kind of the secret, Chris. And I'm really excited to see what happens over the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, it's going to be an exciting ride. I'm excited for my kids when they build their businesses or whatever they want to do to embrace digital. They're watching what dad and mom are doing, and they roll their eyes and they put their finger in their mouth when we get some kind of accolade on a social platform. There was something that came up a few years ago on a year ago on Snapchat about me on some list, and my kid Garrett just rolled his eyes. It's like, oh my God, what's the world coming to, right? And between you and me and anyone else that's listening, I wasn't even that active on Snapchat. It has to do with a reporter who finds an interest in what you're doing and then includes you in an article on Mashable, right? I mean, it's all good. But I do think that, I don't know about you, but when I started my practice, it was expensive to run a business. It was expensive to have a law library. It was expensive to have couriers. It was expensive to litigate cases. Today, you and I can start a business using these digital platforms for almost nothing. Oh,
we used to own a courier business back in the day named
Selfish. You did? Okay, so you took all my money back in the day.
We took your money, and although we didn't do a lot of lawyers because you guys aren't great at paying your bills. I'm sure you are, but there are other lawyers that sometimes aren't.
Well, bill is such a flexible term. Yeah, no, I hear you. So how do you stand out, Chris? How do you stand out? Be that lawyer that pays his bills, right?
It was all paper, it was all, we had to deliver your dockets, we had to deliver mortgage packages because they weren't electronically transferable back then. Yeah. But I really wish, and that's why I love what you're doing again, and people should follow you, because you really need to learn how important these laws are that we are given by the Constitution. The importance of legality and laws. I'll just go back to it. And how much they actually, people don't even realize how much this shapes your day and your life, the protection of your property at home, your protection of your family. All these laws are super important, all the way up to our politics and everything else. And I really wish they teach more law in school. I wish I had gone to school to be a lawyer. It's one of those things that I think I might have taken a wrong turn in life. I don't know. But I know I'd be a bad lawyer. I'd be a pretty evil lawyer because I'm a pretty evil lawyer now for what I do.
Well, so when you use the term evil, your clients may actually use the term effective.
I wouldn't work for clients, of course, but I've been on the other side. I've been in battles with some pretty evil attorneys that have pretty unscrupulous sort of morals. And seen and dealt with that, and actually battled them pretty well because they didn't have anything to lose.
Here's something, Chris, that a lot of people don't realize is in the legal communities. Okay, it's really a small community, and we all know, and the judges all know who the good guys and the bad guys are. And what you read about in the papers or see on the news in the evening news, that's not the real world. Okay, those are interesting legal stories that stand out for whatever reason. That's not what's really happening every single day down at the courthouse. And so when you deal with a knucklehead on as opposing counsel, what you do is you take the high road. What you do is you get the judge involved. What you do is you don't lower yourself. When he or she goes low, you go high. I don't know where I've heard that before, but it works in the legal profession too. And so you have to think long term, and it's not easy. I'm a guy that's always liked to drop gloves, Chris. Okay, trust me on this. Now, having said that, when I first started practicing, when the phone call started going south, I helped it go south really, really fast. And then the letters start flying back and forth. And then what happens is you got to bill your clients for the time. And I realized for me, that wasn't part of my DNA. I didn't need to I realized soon that I didn't need to play those games. In other words, if opposing counsel wants to be a dick, then I'll see him in court. We'll be in front of 12 jurors, and we'll let the jury decide who's right or wrong. All right.
If he's a dick, the jury's going to see it and go.
They do see it. And the same thing applies to social media, though. The same thing applies to digital. Is you and I both know there are a lot of people on stage that have actually violated some of the things we've talked about, and nobody knows about it. I'm the guy that gets the phone calls, right? I'm the guy that gets the phone calls from the pissed off social media agency that just had somebody on stage who did something wrong. And so I would encourage everybody to embrace social and embrace digital, but always do your due diligence. Okay, don't go all in until you've independently researched or done a background check on a company, a product, or a service, or an opportunity before you go in. I don't think there's anything, there are no get rich quick solutions out there. Everything that I've done during the course of my life has taken a lot of time, a lot of work, and a lot of effort. And most of the people on social that you feel are doing really well, that have real legitimate companies, they put in the time and they put in the effort. These things just don't happen overnight. I will tell you, when you talk about laws, Chris, everyone look at forced arbitration agreements, okay?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people aren't aware that when they buy a product or service, in the terms of service agreements, in the contracts that they enter into, they're waiving their right to jury trial. They're allowing their dispute to be arbitrated or mediated by an impartial arbitrator, which generally isn't impartial, and you're not going to like the way these things turned out. And with the recent data breaches that we've all been hearing about over the last 7 to 10 days, a lot of people fell into the forced arbitration arena, and it's not a good thing. Now, there are companies that are waiving forced arbitration for PR purposes. It's not because they want to resolve these issues. The reason they're waiving the forced arbitration provisions, it's not because they're good people or good companies. It's because the lawyers are busting their balls to make sure that they waive these provisions.
And mediators, even employers, I think are doing it now. Having a mediator is the same as having a wet ramen noodle try and argue or try and decide who's smarter. I mean, I've been in mediation in lawsuits.
Yeah, unless you know the mediator or arbitrator.
I guess I'd never had that privilege, but
what is that saying? A good lawyer knows the law. A great lawyer knows the judge.
There you go. There you go. I should have been an attorney. I love law, and I love the intricacies of it, and all the different things.
I can tell.
You guys have some power. That I remember one time. And let me go back to this because you plugged this. Setting up your C corps or your LLCs and your legal liabilities up front before you need them. Because I always hear this from people. Well, I'm just starting a business. It doesn't have any money yet, so who cares? When you suddenly become super successful, when you suddenly become rich, especially when you become rich, the shakedown lawsuits come at you out of the woodwork for stupid shit that you just never see coming. Like, never see coming. I remember in fact, the mediation case that we were sued on, it had been 3 years since we'd left behind a building that we'd leased. We'd moved to another location. We'd left them behind our security deposit for like $16,000 or something. I think we owed them maybe a month or two or a month, but we'd done so much investment into the building, investing in infrastructure, because it was an old Class C building, and we built out all this kind of crap. We kind of felt like we were even. They never sent us a bill. We never worried about it. 3 years later, out of the blue, we get sued for like $30,000, including the $16,000 of deposit that they kept, which was interesting. But it was just a shakedown lawsuit. So they'd run out of money and said, who the hell can we sue? And they came after us after 3 years. So when you're setting up your business now, realize that you may become really successful in the future, and you won't see it coming until it's too late. And, a lot of people kick around, well, I'll sue you, well, I'll sue you, well, I'll sue you. And usually when you hear people talking like that, they've never sat down and just had an initial discussion with an attorney for the initial fee. And when you get hit with an attorney saying, my retainer just to start this lawsuit, just to begin, Chris, is $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever. Then you really start getting a wake-up call to the reality of the situation that you're in, and the penalties that are wide open to come at you.
It can be an expensive decision, and it's not always the right decision for everyone to protect their rights in court. But Chris, one other legal issue or tip that will help protect your listeners is, you mentioned the improvements that you put into this Class C business, never really worried about it, nothing in writing. I want to encourage everybody online, when you're forming a partnership, when you're doing business with somebody else, confirm everything in writing. Put everything in writing. A tweet, a DM on Twitter, a text message doesn't make a business relationship. And I've watched startups with a couple of text messages create million-dollar companies. And that's fantastic. But guess what happens after a year? It's like a bad divorce. And everything goes sideways, and there's no documentation, establishing what the relationship is or the obligations of the parties are. So make sure, you guys and gals, to use an entity like LegalZoom.com. It's a great company, okay? Go on LegalZoom. Go on LegalZoom.com. They do a great job. And use them to do your corporations, your LLCs. Use them to do your business agreements, okay? I don't like seeing people do business as general partnerships. The liability is just too huge. Don't do business as, look, I am a lawyer. I'm a California lawyer. I'm not your lawyer to anybody that's listening or watching. But generally speaking, I do not let my clients do business as general partnerships because of liability reasons. Platforms like LegalZoom are great to get the ball rolling. They're going to save you a lot of money. Have a lawyer look over the decisions that you're going to be making before you go online and form your companies, okay? But the other big issue, and I talked about this down at Social Media Day San Diego, Chris, and it was more people came up to me about this issue than anything else. And it was, document your relationships with your partners, with your investors, with your clients. When you sell product or services online, make sure you've got some type of confirmation as to what exactly just happened. Use companies like DocuSign to have your 4 or 5 business templates already set up where you can just email or text your DocuSign document. Somebody can digitally sign it, and you've got an understanding so that 3 years later, when somebody comes back to you for something that they claim that you did wrong, you've got a written document that shows that you're right. And if you have that written document, a good lawyer can go into court and on what's called a summary proceeding, get their lawsuit almost immediately dismissed from court. So prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. And I did learn that in law school. And the 5 Ps or 6 Ps, prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. The 6 Ps is something that everybody needs to pay attention to.
Yeah. And having a C Corp, I slept so well at night having a C Corp after we started getting the shakedown lawsuits from employees and stuff like that. Having a C Corp really helped me sleep at night because we had a lot of great assets. I had multiple homes. I lived in 3 different states, had a BMW at 2 different airports at any given point in time. I had a lot to get sued for, and people knew it. And so people would shake us down. So one day you just wake up and all of a sudden they're coming at the door at you. And then it didn't help all my speeding tickets either. That's how I got familiar with judges, courtrooms, and attorneys and stuff. But even then in family custody cases, I have a friend who's going through divorce right now. I had 2 friends that they weren't married. They broke up. They had 2 children together. They each spent $50,000 arguing over the most inane, stupid crap in family court. In the end, after they both spent what would be $100,000 between them that they could have put towards these 2 kids' education and college fund, just fighting over stupid crap, they got the same, settlement that they were initially offered by the court in the sharing of the kids. And people really need to realize how important the law is and how these protections are, and of course the costs that go into this. One of my good friends, one of my early girlfriends, she worked for an attorney firm. This is when I started to learn about law. I think it was like 18 or 19. And they had a case where they had to go in, and they were fighting over like a $10,000 piece of property. It was some stupid little land piece or something. And the attorneys were billing out, I think, at like $500 an hour each on both sides. And they basically walked into the meeting and they said, look, your attorney gets paid $500 a month or $500 an hour. Our attorney charges $500 an hour. We're arguing over a $10,000 piece of property. Within a couple hours, this is going to be worthless. So we may want to come to agreement really quick and just quit being dicks.
There's a reality check. And so here's the thing, Chris, it's important for the client to sit down on day one with the lawyer and ask, the right questions. What's our end game here? What is it we're trying to achieve? What's it going to cost if everything goes our way, or if everything doesn't go our way? What are the good and bad scenarios? And so you can make an intelligent decision as to whether or not you should be pursuing your claims or your rights in court. Just falling back quickly, you mentioned the importance of the law. People need to be careful what they post on social because it's evidence. Your comments, your videos, your blog posts, everything you guys post, that's potential evidence that can be screenshotted and or displayed in a courtroom in front of a jury. And we had a case that was a bullying case, and we actually made new law in the state of California, Chris. It was a cool case. But we had a case where I had the defendant on the stand, and it had to do with comments that he was making about women. And he testified for 30 minutes in front of the jury that he would never use that type of language, much less to describe a woman. Okay? And once he was done putting his foot in his mouth, you think he would have known where I was going with this. I brought up his Facebook page. And of course, every single word that I asked him about, coincidentally, and there was a little planning there, was referenced in this Facebook post. And you could see the jury just like rolling their eyes, like, you just lied to us under oath for the last 30 minutes and misled us. And they went to bat for my client and spanked him and his family, and we got a good result. So what you guys put on Facebook, what you guys put on the social platforms, make sure it's truthful, make sure it's accurate, right? Like I said, deflect, reflect, and select a response before you do that, and it'll keep you out of trouble. So,
in fact, another good example of that is the O.J. Simpson trial, where the detective, who I think had used the N-word or talked disparagingly about people, I think that was one of the two key factors in that trial that threw the jury, where the jury went, I think he tainted the evidence.
Detective Mark Furman. And I had F. Lee Bailey on the show.live. I don't know if you caught that, but
I did see that. I didn't watch the show, but I did see it.
So that was awesome. And he talked about that. And he talked about how he baited, along those same lines, Chris Darden to have OJ try on the glove during a break. Wow. So what you didn't see on camera is we take breaks in court, maybe every hour and a half, use the bathroom, grab a cup of coffee. And during one of the breaks, what Mr. Bailey told Chris Darden is you ought to have him try it on. And Bailey said, he knows OJ, the size of OJ's hands. And, excuse me real quick. And he knew that glove wasn't going to fit. And he just poked him and poked him and poked him. And so when the court reconvened, that's what Darden did. Now, I'm friends with the Brown family, and it's a travesty as to what happened. I'm glad that OJ was hit with a $25 million civil wrongful death verdict, which shows that the system does work. But you're right. That was a good initial display to the community in general of how what you do outside of court can come back in and shed light on an issue that maybe you don't want that light to be shining on. So you got to be careful. Be careful out there.
We've been seeing some. There'll be a huge case, I think, coming forward, or maybe it will come forward, of our politics thing of having our first president that tweets a lot, and it might be interesting. I don't want to get into politics, but it might be interested in seeing how Mr. Mueller, if any of those tweets do end up being used if there's a case against him. Well, our first big tweeting president, if you will.
So the tweets are the fuel on the fire. The fire is going to be all of the business documentation, all of the financial documentation between Trump and his organizations and the campaign and the Russians. That's, you turn over that many stones and you're going to find some stink bugs under those stones. And I think that's going to ultimately be his downfall. But it was spurred on by social media, by the tweets. And people need to realize those tweets are all evidence.
Yeah. I mean,
it's
it
all
does
evidence.
belie some intent on his part from some of the things he said.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's an exciting time to be alive. It's an exciting time to see how social media affects us in business, affects us in politics, and life in general.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. And I really, if you're going through college, I don't know if you can take any law classes, because I think you have to be a certain point in college to be able to even take some things. But if you can watch Mitch Jackson on his Twitter and watch his podcast, you have a great podcast that you put on, and educate yourself on the law, the aspects of it. Me being a business owner since I was a kid, since 18, learning about law, learning how to protect my businesses. Early on, I bought an incorporation book, learned how to set the corporation, learn how to make sure that, the other thing that's important too, and I'm sure you can speak to this, is not only setting up your corporation as an LLC or a C Corp or whatever designation you use, but also making sure that that can't be pierced, especially in a C Corp, the piercing of a C Corp by doing certain things that can give you liability to your personal assets. You can do things that can make it so that the court can pierce that, or an attorney can pierce that.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, let's just say most people don't run their companies correctly, so that it is very easy for us to go in and pierce the corporate veil. That's what Chris is talking about. So even if you use LegalZoom to set up your corporation, your limited liability company, that's the easy part. The challenging part for most people is running that company on a day and yearly basis the right way, which means separate bank accounts, separate insurance policies, making sure all of your state and federal documents are filed in a timely fashion, making sure you're paying. Here in California, we have a franchise tax fee that has to be paid each year to the state of California. And if you don't do this, your company is going to be an invalid or suspended company, and it's not going to protect you. And
I think commingling funds, like you say, keeping separate bank accounts, commingling funds is one of the, I think,
easiest things to prove. And what Chris means by that is, for example, if our corporation's Jackson and Wilson Inc., and if I'm using my business corporate banking account to pay for my child's soccer fees to play club soccer or high school soccer, I'm taking business funds and using them for personal expenses. And that shows, or it may show, that I'm not using my corporation as a real business entity. In fact, I'm using it for other reasons. Chris, everyone's doing that. I mean, that's what everyone's doing. And what they don't realize is, once discovery, that you enjoy doing so much, once you get into the discovery process, and I ask that corporation to disclose all of their books, their bank accounts, I take the deposition of their CPA or accountant, that's where all this information comes out. That's what Mueller's doing right now with the whole Trump investigation, is he's turning these stones over. And I can comfortably tell you it's not going to end up well for the Trump administration or for he as president. I'm very comfortable with telling you that. But it does take time, and it takes work. And when you have that many experts pointing the finger at you, I think the outcome's fairly obvious. So,
and it may be, and I don't want to get into politics, so I'm going to try.
Yeah, but I keep steering us back there. So,
but an example that we just used, the money laundering issue with Russia and them buying apartments in Trump, that's another example of where that piercing may take place in liability. And so, if you own your own company, even if you set up your own LLC online, you protect your little business on social media, make sure you're very careful about how you use your money, how you use your funds. Like you just said, make sure that you're not taking, personal payments out of your business account and all that good stuff, because you may think you're protected, but you've actually opened up a huge legal liability to your personal assets.
Make sure that your customers, your clients, and the general community understand that they're doing business with an entity and not you as an individual. Your letterhead has to be specific, your business cards. Chris, online, social media, when people jump on and do a live stream, it's really important that they, right off the bat, let their audience know, I'm going live right now from Sammy the Surfboards down in Dana Point, California. We're going to talk about the 3 new fins on our latest boards. He's just let his audience know that it's Sammy the Surfboards Inc. that's broadcasting live on live streaming. Most people aren't doing that. Okay, when I watch a live stream, even though I happen to know they're a social media consultant, I'm not hearing that. I'm seeing Bob Jones live streaming. and talking about products and services, he or she is exposing themselves to litigation. Be very clear, and then every 5 or 10 minutes, come back like you see on the news each evening and say, listen, if you guys have any questions, give us a shout out at sammythesurfboards.inc and Dana Point. Once again, let's go back to our company show. It's really important that you distinguish the difference between an individual show and a company show. That's a big mistake a lot of people make, Chris.
Wow. This show, by the way, is the Chris Voss Show. It is not endorsed by Chris Voss in any way, shape, or form.
And I'll second that. Yeah, and it's something that I brought up to influencers before, who probably as well, and I know you know them as well. And despite that, they continue to make the same mistakes with every single live stream, and that's fine as long as nothing bad happens. But
something bad happens, like we talked about. It's when you suddenly get a $300,000 lawsuit for 2 employees that you just hired. And you're looking down the barrel of that gun. Plus, you're looking at treble damages with penal.
Ooh, now you're giving me goosebumps. Treble damages and punitive damages. Don't tease me, Chris. Don't tease me. So distinguish
Mitch Jackson off.
Make sure you're clear, okay, when you're posting to social, that you're, doing so on behalf of your business, especially live streaming, because that's where I see the mistake being made. And if you're an influencer who's being compensated, whether it's money or other consideration, to share someone else's product or service, follow FTC rules. If you go to streaming.lawyer and type in influencer in the search bar, you're going to see 3 or 4 specific articles laying out what you as an influencer, information you need to know to go about things right. Once again, Chris, most influencers aren't going about this right. About 2 years ago, I was actually thinking of opening up a department here at the firm and becoming an agent, okay, such as like sports agents for professional athletes, being an agent for influencers. And my legal malpractice carrier said, no, you're not, because they're not following FTC rules and regulations. There's too much liability for us to afford liability malpractice insurance to you. Yeah, there's zero confidence in the industry. So people need to be aware of these things. The other thing is, if you're doing business online, see whether or not there's any type of liability insurance that you can get to protect yourself. If you're doing business out of your home and it's an online business, your homeowner's company, maybe it's State Farm, they offer a at-home business liability policy.
Do they?
Check with your agent and get protected, so that if you get sued for an officer or director mistake, if you get sued for a defective product, you're going to have insurance company liability coverage protecting you. That's something I recommend everybody look at.
I mean, you just never know. I remember the suit that I referenced earlier, where we'd left a building behind, and 3 years later they decided to come after, I think it was $5,000 really in rent that we owed them, but they were being jerks. I think the problem was at the 5,000 level, they'd be put into small claims court. So they'd sued us for like 20 or 30,000, which included the 16. I think it was 16 and 5. The 16 was a security deposit, which they kept, which had gone towards our back pay rent. And so really we only had like $5,000 technically on paper. But when they sued us, they had gotten a thing from court because we moved our offices, and they a constable showed up at my office to serve us. And he took an inventory of all of our property, including my personal vehicles in the parking lot. And it was really freaked out. And he's like, we can seize all this stuff right now if you don't give me the information. And so, well, it was maybe a $5,000 lawsuit, which wasn't dropping the bucket for what we did back then. It was really freaked out. And so, you don't realize the importance of these laws or the protection of them until sometimes it's too late. And it's really scary when it comes upon you.
So the lesson from today's show is, seriously, find a lawyer in your town who you can know, like, and trust, who's got experience, that's available to answer your questions. And most of us will do that. We like to do that. And if you're looking for a good lawyer, go to Martindale Hubble. It's martindale.com. and you can drop down search and find the right lawyer for your industry, your profession in your town. Number 2, do business as an entity. Number 3, try to get liability insurance if you can, depending on what you do and how you go about it. And number 4, I think, is always be respectful towards the other side. Be respectful towards the other side. Like we talked about, you can avoid litigation, you can avoid claims by simply being a nice human being sometimes, okay? I can't stress that enough. People don't like to sue other people who they know, like, and trust. And in the medical profession, for example, a lot of physicians are being taught people skills, because if they'll step out from an operating room and be honest right off the bat with the patient's family as to what did or didn't happen the way it was planned, oftentimes those families, statistics are showing, will not file a malpractice claim against the physician. The problem is when the physician steps out, rushes that conversation because he's got a golf tee-off time 45 minutes from now and doesn't tell the family any of this and bolts out the door, that's where people get pissed off, and that's the energy behind a new medical malpractice case. So it's full disclosure, it's being transparent, which is something a lot of people talk about on social, a lot of and I think that's important. And it's just always trying to do your best. If you do that, you're going to avoid most of the hassles that we've talked about during the show.
And I don't want to take up all your time here. In fact, we've run over an hour, and we should have you on more often. But one aspect you did talk about was putting different parts of your assets into LLCs. In the old days, we had a courier company, and we had multiple cars, and we owned our huge mortgage business and another business. And an attorney one day sat down with us and said, look, you need to put each of these cars into a trust, and maybe we should put them into an LLC. But back then, we put them into each car into a trust, so that if it killed somebody, ran them over, it would give us some more buffer. Now, when attorneys sue, they just put everybody on the docket, but still it would give us some liability protection with the trust. But you mentioned LLCs, like Dennis putting LLCs. Even though people are social online, they may need to realize that part of their online business may be physical assets like cars, houses, like you just mentioned, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. So another example, probably a more clear example, would be if you invest in real estate in apartment complexes. Each apartment complex that you invest in offline, you're putting into a separate corporation or LLC. So if you have 10 apartment complexes, you've got 10 separate LLCs or corporations. That's the preferred way of doing business. Online, Chris, what I've been consulting clients to do is when they bring out a new online course, a downloadable course, that's, to set that up as a separate LLC. So course number 1 is LLC number 1. Course number 2 is LLC number 2. I mean, that's a very prudent way of doing it if you're looking at big time numbers. Or if you've got a blog that people are reading each and every day, and you set up your downloadable course as limited liability company number 1. And let's say maybe you have a online weekly live streaming television type of show, maybe set that up in a separate corporation or LLC, and you want to keep all these things separate. And it's called asset protection, and it's something that's not new. It's something that a lot of prudent business people have been doing forever. The old school offshore asset protection venues that were used at one time, maybe as recently as 10 or 15 years ago, that type of gamesmanship really doesn't work anymore legally. Because of IRS reporting requirements and everything else in between. But for most of us, that doesn't apply to our lives anyway. I mean, you don't have to get that complicated. But just think about separating a high liability asset, for example, tractor trailers. If you've got a trucking company, and each one of those tractor trailer vehicles are a separate entity, okay, because they have a propensity to cause harm. They have a propensity to bring a lot of liability into your company. Okay, so maybe each one of those trucks are a separate LLC. Having said that, if that same company has 4 online websites, maybe you can combine all of those into one entity because the liability exposure isn't as great. So yeah, that's an interesting topic that we're just kind of touching upon. But it's something that fascinates me because I took down a company once about 15 years ago. And after we were done, Chris, I realized the judgment we had wasn't worth any more than the paper it was written on because that company had used very, very good asset protection techniques to protect everything. And I was pissed for about an hour. And then I was amazed and fascinated at what they did. And I dived all in to make sure that never happened again to one of my clients.
Yeah, so that's how we won. That's how we won the $300,000 lawsuit for the 2 employees on the non-compete agreement. Was once we told their attorneys that they'd won the injunction to go into court, and once we told the attorneys that we had no assets, they basically went back to their attorney. And well, I'll have to share this story on another podcast with you. The way the red fern grows. Legal story that attorneys love me telling the story to them and educating them on it. But we beat them with the Chris Voss red fern grows story. And basically, once we told them they had no assets, they went to their client and said, "We need more retainer fees." And so they ended up settling for what we'd spent in attorney fees. We paid nothing. There were no damages to us other than just the harassment of the attorney fees, which were expensive. It was about $10,000, but they ended up spending $50,000. And people should realize that if you're suing somebody, usually the person suing ends up paying a lot more on getting the lawsuit done, defending. But what's funny is they didn't pay their attorneys. They tried complaining that their attorneys didn't do their job, and their attorneys end up suing them for their fees.
Oh yeah. No, that happens all the time. You know, that's why you need to be.
Ever.
Look, for any type of business, you want to disclose in writing up front the pros and cons of each and every transaction. And for us as lawyers, we do that with our clients, so that if things don't work out the way Chris wants them to, I can look back and say, 2 years ago, not only did we discuss this, but here's your initials. Hey, you want to know what the biggest liability issue is I see online right now, in addition to what we've talked about? It's driving with one of these.
Oh,
it's doing business. You know, this is another, we'll do this another time. But before we wrap things up, it's live streaming while you're driving. It's distracted driving using these. If you're doing a company or business live stream or post while using one of these as driving and you get in an accident, you're going to lose everything. You may even go to jail because the laws are changing. So please don't use your smartphone while driving. And hands-free and Bluetooth, statistics and studies have shown, are no safer just because your hands-free or Bluetooth. Your mind's still not on the task of operating a motor vehicle. And if anybody would like information on any of that stuff, reach out to me at streaming.lawyer, because I've got the links and I love to share them with you.
You know, if I was doing a post for the Chris Voss Show in my car on my phone, and in something like, say, maybe I was sharing this podcast or one of my podcasts, and I killed somebody with my car, that would probably create some serious legal personal liability for not only me but my business. And so people need to consider that as well. But they shouldn't be. Yeah. In fact, that's one of the things I've respected about you and I've liked about you. You've been really pushing the don't text and drive line. Over the years, AT&T, our good friends who've always been supportive of what the Chris Voss Show has done since 2012, they actually funded the film, or portioned the film. I think all the carriers did. And I forget the famous director, but he did a movie about texting. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a moving movie about texting and driving. Have you seen it? I believe it's called It Can Wait, or the hashtag we used was called It Can Wait.
It Can Wait is the hashtag that you're referring to. I don't know what the name of the movie. There's some really good clips out there now. Showing the risk.
I'll send you a link to the movie, and I really advise everyone to watch it, and let your kids watch it. Those darn teenagers and millennials that are out there, have them watch it. But he's a world famous director who's done a lot of great movies. German guy, I believe, or Austrian, and he went and made a movie where he's interviewed people that killed people with their cars while they were texting. He's interviewed the damage from the other end of people that either survived it, or they're the family members who survived it. And it's just gut-wrenching. We went to a red carpet affair in Hollywood for the premiere of it. There was a lot of good, I'm trying to remember who all the actors were that were there, but it was a really moving experience with AT&T. And the movie's still out there, and I highly recommend people watch it, have their kids watch it.
Do me a favor, Chris. I mean, if you find it, the link, share it at stopdd.today. That's our Facebook group where we're all sharing distracted driving resources. It's stopdd.today. That'll take you there. And at the top of that group is a pinned post with a video of young kids chatting with a victim of distracted driving, who lost her parents in the accident. Her life has been turned upside down. It's very, very emotional video. But, a lot of people, Chris, don't realize that each year 4,000 to 6,000 people are killed because of distracted driving. Between 400,000 and 600,000 are injured. And to put that number into perspective, about 290,000 people are injured because of drunk driving. So the distracted driving injuries are quite a bit higher than drunk driving. And what I didn't realize is each and every second in the United States during daylight hours, about 600,000 people are driving around on our streets with one of these in their hand and not paying attention to where they're going. And they're placing their lives at risk. They're placing you at risk. They're placing our families at risk. And it's just not okay. And it's not okay to look the other way. And I'm a firm believer, you guys and gals, that when you see influencers online who are so self-centered that they're putting their best interest in front of the safety of their community, you need to say something. You need to stop supporting what they're doing. Reach out privately, educate them. A lot of this is about raising awareness and education. We don't need to shame anybody. Yeah. But if you see the same knucklehead over and over and over doing this, despite reaching out 2 or 3 times, I think it's time to stand up and say something and save a life. So
I see a lot of people doing videos in cars while they're driving, and some of them are good where it's a fixed mount. I can tell it's a fixed mount, but they're looking at the camera from time to time.
Dude, I'll share you a link. I'll share a link with you. I might be guilty of this, so well, we all are. Look, I was guilty of it too. I originally thought to myself, I've got 20 minutes on my drive to the office. I'm going to mount my phone, and this is back in 2011, 2012, and I'm going to talk legal stuff on my way to the office. I'm guilty of it too. And somebody actually reached out to me and said, Mitch, this might not be the safest thing to do. And they sent me a link to Joel Feldman. It's nddd.org. Joel's 21-year-old daughter was killed crossing a crosswalk while she was in college, and the person that ran her over and killed her was distracted driving. He was texting. And so Joel and his family used this as an opportunity to speak across the country and raise awareness. It's a tragic story, but once I was in touch with Joel, I willingly picked up the ball and ran with it. And then with my son, Chris, who is in Rotary Interact, is the high school equivalent of Rotary. That was his project last year. We formed the StopDD.today group on Facebook, and we're trying to raise awareness. Kids are doing it, but so are parents. Everyone's doing this, and we need to put a stop to it. And I've pissed some people off over the years with respect to my position on all of this. But you know what, Chris? That's their problem, not mine. They need to stop doing this.
I mean, and a lot of times when you're giving that sort of advice, you're giving out of love and careness because you don't want to see them. You don't want to see them get just destroyed or kill somebody else. Because man, when you watch the AT&T movie, It Can Wait. It's just heart-wrenching, and you realize that these people they're going to have to live with this for the rest of your life. I don't know that I could live with the rest of my life knowing I killed somebody. Although I don't know, there are some. No, I'm just kidding.
It's real. It's real. Look, here's the thing. In 2001, I represented a family where a truck driver dropped his cell phone to his left as he was reaching down for it. He ran the red light and hit my client, and she spent the next 4 months, multiple surgeries. It was a very tragic, eye-opening type of case that we were able to handle. As recently as the last year and a half, I had a family sitting across from me where the grandmother and the granddaughter were both killed, and the 2 other occupants in the vehicle each sustained $300,000 to $400,000 in medical bills, all because of a distracted driver operating his vehicle at a high rate of speed in a distracted fashion that caused this multiple fatality case. When you're eyeball to eyeball with families like this, it gets real, and it gets real, real fast. And that's why I have zero tolerance. This is not just a conversation. This changes lives. And the gentleman who caused this multiple fatality accident is now being charged with 2 homicides, by the Orange County District Attorney's Office, he'll probably go to jail for the rest of his life. And the reality, Chris, is that a year earlier, the same individual was, like you said, with Discovery. What we were able to find out is he was driving down the freeway in Orange County, California at 110 miles an hour, live streaming his speedometer on his car with the rap music going and joking around as he's winding in and out of people. So this is conduct that's been going on for some time. And it's all, he's now paying the piper. And so this is real, and that's one reason I'm so adamant about this. I just, I'm
glad you beat that drum. It was ATT's been promoting this for 6 years now, and they actually have multiple movies now. The original one was a 2013 Werner Herzog documentary, and some of the insanity is pretty crazy. Like my friend used to say about his kids' tweets. He goes, "I know they're the most stupid, inane, worthless tweets ever. Like, hi, how are you? How's it going? Oh, I'm doing fine." You really have to look at that conversation and go, do I really need to pick up that phone while I'm driving and see some stupid, is this really worth killing somebody over, whatever sort of inane conversation you're having in text? Yeah. And in the movie, I'll never forget when we went to the screening of Werner's film with AT&T, there was actually a couple. This is the most insane thing I'd ever heard about. There was a couple in the car together, like next to each other. They're texting each other in the car. And they killed the family. And it was
geez. Oh, God.
It's like, how necessary was that? You're in the same car.
Well, here's the deal: is it's an addiction. And Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes interviewed Silicon Valley executives and designers and software programmers, and they talked about the addictive quality of smartphones, of the apps, how these programmers are programming them. They're more addictive than a slot machine in Vegas, which is where you live. And it's a challenge for people to put their phones down, as far as, fear of missing out, as far as, being offline, whatever it might be. I tell people, listen, when you're in your car, turn your phone off before you turn your car on. You've got to put your phone away. There is an addiction. It's starting to be recognized. It is diagnosable. And once you understand that it's an addiction, then it's something where I think people can start taking it a little bit more seriously. And it's going to take conversation. It's going to take awareness. It's going to take education. And it's going to take people in the community standing up and not putting up with this stuff.
And the thing is, too, it's real important to teach your children and young people about this stuff before they're getting on the road.
Lead by example.
I think that's where you're seeing, I had heard a statistic, so I'm not sure, I'm not going to claim this is highly accurate, but I swear I'd heard a statistic that said most of the texting while driving accidents that are happening with the youth. And that doesn't give an excuse if you're an adult, but please teach your children this, because you want to keep them around, and I don't want to be killed by your little bastard child.
Yeah, it's 16 to 21. And Chris, the other thing is you got to walk your talk with kids. They're watching mom and dads driving down the street, and mom and dads are doing this, okay? And it's not what you say to kids, it's what they watch. It's what they watch is what they'll mirror. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm gonna round this out, and it's been great talking to Mitch. I'd love to have you on. I'd love to talk more law, because I love law. I'll have to tell you my Where the Red Fern Grows story that the lawyers love to hear. We'll just maybe do this on another podcast or over beer sometime.
Love to. Anytime. I'm always here for you, Chris. This has been fun.
Mitch, give us your plugs one more time so everyone can look them up and follow you online.
Well, I think that the most interesting place to go is not my law firm website. It's streaming.lawyer, which is our social media, video, live streaming website. Connect with me over there or on Twitter @Mitch Jackson. Always here for you guys. If I can ever help out, just reach out on social media and we'll make it happen.
Cool. Sounds good. Everyone follow him over there. It probably is good. We're about to lose the battery on the Samsung Galaxy S8. I didn't plug it in. Thanks to Mitch Jackson for joining us. Be sure to follow him. And, of course, I have a lot of respect for what he does and the information he shares. He's one of the greatest social guys. And he's a great human being from what I've seen over the years, or at least that's my perception. I haven't asked his wife yet, so we'll find out that.
You're very perceptive.
And your wife's an attorney, and so I'm sure she's great too. So be sure to give us a like, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us, hit that like notification, that bell notification button so you can get notifications for all the great podcasts we're doing. We've got great shows coming forward and great guests. And be sure to follow us on Periscope. I'm seeing a lot of hearts on Periscope. Wow, a whole flood of hearts. Thank you for whoever did that. And be sure to follow us on Facebook on the Chris Voss Show, and also our Patreon, patreon.com/Chris Voss. Thanks to our good friends at AT&T for, of course, sharing the latest and greatest phones that we review on the Chris Voss Show, like the Samsung Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus. Be sure to watch for the Note 8, AT&T with the fastest download and upload speeds. We love them. So thanks for tuning into the show. Appreciate your coming by, Mitch Jackson, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.
All right, Chris, take care, buddy. Make it a masterpiece.
All right, thanks for tuning in, everyone.